Well, welcome to my part two of my previous video that I recorded. If you haven't watched it, I suggest you do because this is kind of just piggybacking off of everything that I initially brought up in my first video. But the reason why I wanted to make a part two to this is I watched back my video, and of course I realized there was a lot of things I forgot to discuss because I said in the beginning of my video I was trying my best to be as authentic as possible and just kind of talking from my authenticity and not really following a guideline. But one thing that I did not mention is my story and how I removed this toxic person out of my life, because when we grow up alongside of our abuser, it's very hard for us to make that life change. This person is usually a very significant person in the family. So it's very hard. So I just kind of want to discuss how I made the choices that I did and what I did to remove myself. Um, I also want to mention before I go any further, I know I discussed in other videos of mine, and I hope you're an avid watcher and you're kind of following along with me, but this is all part of the reprogramming of myself and my programmed reactions to the behavior that I had to live alongside for a long time. So even me making these videos is a big deal for me because I lived in a lot of fear surrounding this, and that fear involved, friends knowing, people that I grew up with. We lived in a town where, for the most part, everybody kind of knew somebody. There was a sibling that went to school with another sibling, and it was like we all kind of knew each other. And I had a lot of those friends growing up that were either in school with my sister or my brothers, and I went to school with one of their younger siblings, and we just all kind of knew each other, and we considered each other family because we had known each other from childhood. So, there were a lot of people that were involved when I decided, as you could tell, I'm like breathing deep because my chest gets heavy thinking about it. But I had to cut a lot of ties with a lot of people, and I didn't expect these people to understand where I came from. It didn't bother me that they don't understand why I'm no longer around. I know I mentioned in other videos that I've moved across the US. So I've moved 1,600 miles away from where I was born and raised, and the only place I knew. I had never lived really anywhere else. That was all I knew. And, I made a huge life change by moving to where I am now. I live in a different time zone. And I live down south now. So I went from the East Coast to down south. And yeah, it's a big life change. Okay. So I have my notes now. I made sure to make some notes about stuff. So my part two is family and friends. So when someone found out, it was this, now they know, and they either act weird, and there's really no good way for them to react, honestly, when you make someone aware of this. And I don't mean to giggle, but I guess that's like a nervous little thing I'm doing. So I hope that you don't find anything I say like I'm trying to say it funny. And people feel they need to pick a side. And I understood that, which is why I was fine with people not knowing what exactly happened. I didn't get stuck in this like, well, I have to tell everybody, why I'm leaving. Like they have to understand where I'm coming from. I didn't. All right. And also, it seems like you're on a smear campaign. That's another thing that can happen that we get very fearful of, is that people will not believe us and then think that we're just out to like get this person and bring this person down. So that can cause a sense of fear as well. I put in big, bold letters, stay true to yourself. Do not expect people to understand. That's so big. I know I mentioned in my other video, at the end of the day, this is about you. This is about your healing. So if you feel as though someone's ignorance to a situation will trigger an emotion within yourself that you're not able to deal with, don't tell them. And this is where you're, take care of yourself. I used to always hear people say that, be easy on yourself, take care of yourself. And I didn't really understand it. This is that very thing. This is a perfect example of taking care of yourself, of understanding what you can and cannot handle, and deciding to not feed into the things that you feel as though you can't handle at that moment. That's called taking care of yourself. That's listening to your reactions, your emotions, understanding that you're uncomfortable, and then abiding by not pursuing or doing that thing that's making you uncomfortable. I left behind relationships attached to him, which I did. I also want to mention that I have a nephew, and he has a son, and I always loved being an aunt. That was my thing. Before I had children, I always used to say, like, I'm not going to have any kids. I'm going to be the world's best aunt, and I'm going to stick with that. And, my nephew was born before I had children. So it was a very wonderful thing. I was at that house every chance I got to hang out with him. So I have an immense amount of love for my nephew. But unfortunately, when I decided to cut ties with my brother, I had to be okay with the fact of cutting ties with the people that were an attachment of him, that wouldn't understand. And that's hard. But I mean, obviously I didn't, because at the end of the day, the way I looked at it was, I can love my nephew, I can love my sister-in-law that he was married to, but I can't love them more than I love myself, and I have to put myself first. If I'm always jeopardizing my best well-being, that's not going to do anything for me at the end of the day. So I can't live for another person other than myself. Well, and obviously my children, that's a whole other ballgame. I also put, they'd never understand. Another thing was, well, why didn't you say anything sooner? I mean, I hate that. I hate when I hear things of that nature. Like, oh, well, if it's true, why didn't you say anything sooner? Well, how about fuck you? And it's called fear, right? And that's why we don't say these things. And the fact that we can't come up with an answer for something doesn't discredit the event from happening, right? So whenever you find yourself presented with a question that you don't really have an answer for, that's normal, because these type of things aren't easy to work through, and we're not always going to have that answer. But the number one thing that we should have is the awareness behind it. The awareness to something that makes us feel uncomfortable, the awareness that we don't know something at that moment. But as time goes on, and as we figure these things out and see where these things lie, we'll get there. We'll figure it out. But at that very moment, you don't have to always have the answers, and you don't have to give anybody an explanation other than yourself, right? Because at the end of the day, when you go home and you go to sleep at night, it is your head that is on that pillow, and you have to live with the decisions and the choices that you made in that day. So just keep that in mind. Don't second guess your morals. Don't second guess your gut feeling. Okay, I'm sorry. So I'm gonna keep it moving. Another thing was, yes, that the more comfortable I became with discussing this, I had discussions with people, and the more discussions that I had with people, I would hear them say that either they themselves had this type of situation happen, or someone very close in the family had some form of incest play out in their family dynamic. So I know I said in my other video, this is not an uncommon thing. It's just something people don't feel comfortable talking about. And I feel very empowered that I can talk about it, because for the longest time I could not talk about it. And it just goes to show how far we can bring ourselves. Anyway, okay. So and regarding family. So I know I discussed in my other videos that I live a very sheltered life. I removed myself away from, this toxic life that I lived. And, when you look back at my brother had raped me as a child, and I grew up alongside him, friends, family, we all go to these gatherings together, whether it's for holidays or whatever it is, my children's birthday parties, his kid's birthday party. There was always this family dynamic, right? Because we're family. And then you have your friends that are friends of the family that come over, and it gets rough. There's this hard realization. It wasn't easy. It took me months, actually, to come to this type of realization. But I was in therapy, and I know I mentioned it in my first video. And in my therapy, I remember my therapist telling me, Michelle, if you think that now that he's an adult, that he's changed, don't. You're sadly mistaken. Do not think that just because he was a child when he did this, or he was a teenager, that he is not mentally capable of doing this again, because he will. And that's just a really poor judgment on your part. So that was a huge eye-opener for me. But I mentioned it to, I have another brother. I know I said I'm the youngest of 4 siblings. So, I mean, 4 children. So I did mention it to my other brother, and, we never discussed it growing up. And one day I said to him, hey, I'm in therapy, and I'm trying to work through what he did to me. And I remember my brother saying, I remember that. And that was a huge deal to me. I know it happened. But to hear him say, yeah, I remember that. And he said to me, and I remember kicking his ass. Now, of course, I don't remember that. I don't remember what the hell happened. In my first video, I mentioned that there was, a lot of vague memories surrounding it. So, when my brother told me that, it kind of fell under that. I didn't remember that. And he said, yeah, no, I kicked his ass. And I told him, if I ever find out that, he touches you again, blah, blah, blah. So was it my brother that had him stop? I don't know. It could be. But, again, I don't know that. I don't remember that. And when I mentioned it to my mom, me and my mom don't have the best relationship. I really don't communicate much with her. I go through bats where I'll talk to her for a little bit, and then I kind of cut her off, because, again, I regulate how I feel. So if I feel uncomfortable, if she crosses a boundary that I've implemented, I have no problem cutting her off, along with a lot of people. And I've not always been that way. So I'm very proud of myself that I'm able to do that. And, again, like I just said, it could be my mom. It doesn't matter, as long as, I'm functioning in my mental best capacity. So I mentioned it to my mom, that I was in therapy about it, and that I decided to cut him out of my life. I knew that from that point forward, I wasn't going to have a normal relationship with him. And I accepted the fact that what happened was really fucked up, and it caused a lot of fucked up shit in my foundation. And I didn't want him in my life, and I was okay with that. I felt like I was obligated to kind of have him in my life for the longest time anyway. So, I mentioned it to my mom, and I said to her, do me a favor from this point forward, just don't ever mention his name. And as long as you can do that, me and you can maintain a relationship, but I don't need that being reminded to me. I don't need that person's name brought up to me. I don't need, people overstepping my boundaries. Well, unfortunately, um, a lot of people couldn't handle that boundary. I gave that boundary to my mother, and I gave that boundary to my other brother. And currently, right now, I am not in talks with either of them, because both of them kept bringing him up to me in conversations, for no apparent reason. And that is not cool, in my opinion, because I've already made them aware that I didn't want this person in my life. This isn't a game. I'm not playing a game here. I made a very serious life decision, and it was very easy for me to move as far as I did. And I don't know if I could be the woman that I am right now with the strengths that I find within myself if I still remained there. So if it's possible, I recommend you move the fuck away. You know, I grew up in a lot of dysfunction, and I had to move the hell away in order to understand that I'm capable of being my own person, because I lived in such fallacy and so many secrets, to cover other people's pride, and the fact that other people didn't want to take responsibility for their horrible decisions. I had to stay quiet, and that's not right. Nobody should have to do that. I know that I'm reaching 16 minutes on my video, and I don't want to keep it too long. I might just actually make a part 3. This is so crazy. But I do want to close off by saying that, if anybody on here has been through what I've been through and you feel as though you can't talk to anybody, please message me. I will hear you out. I'll video chat you. I will let you tell me everything that you need to tell me to get it off of your chest, because it's such a big deal. You have to discuss these things. You have to put that out there. You have to get it off of you. So please, if you relate, message me. I will send you my email. We will communicate off of YouTube, and we will find a way to communicate. And I can be that source of understanding for you. I'm not a therapist, but I've been through it. So I want to extend that to whoever needs to hear that and who's lost, because this is really fucked up. This is some crazy shit that you're dealing with, if you can resonate with this. So yes, I'm going to finish the video off by just telling you I appreciate you for watching my video. I appreciate the time that you put into listening to what I had to say. Again, please like, comment, share, subscribe to my channel, because I don't know if I'm going to make a part 3. I probably will. But in the meantime, I love you, and I'm sending you a lot of love and strength. Thank you.